First of all, I want to congratulate you all. You know why? You're showing that you matter enough that you're investing in yourselves. Anytime you participate in leadership development activities, I've always said there's a functional element to everything and a symbolic element. The functional element is that what you learn, what you take away, what you gain, but there's equally a symbolic element to it. What does that mean? It truly means that you're signaling to yourself and to other people that you are somebody who believes in continuous development. And that's an important trait for everybody, but especially if you're a leader. As a leader, you can never be complacent because the world is changing. Even if you think, well, I'm better today, it's not enough because you've got to make sure that you're always willing to be humble and willing to learn. So I congratulate all of you at such young ages for saying that you're ready to learn. So I want to tell you about the cardinal principles. Even though I coined these and I wanted to make it mnemonic so that it's easy to remember, these values actually come from all of you as cardinals. I went back all the way to when I was in the search, when I was being interviewed for the presidency, and started to look at what characteristics they said that the community said they wanted in a president. Then I talked to students and alumni and faculty and staff, and all the things that I heard people say, tried to pull them together in a way that would be true of us at U of L, and hopefully something that you could all remember. So that's the genesis. And let's start talking about community of care. I'm excited that you're not just going to talk about it, that's one thing, but that you're going to make it your own. You're going to make it your living brand by thinking about what does it actually mean to be a community of care. The truth is words are cheap, right? Words are very, very cheap. What matters is how do people act. I should know this because I've actually published about it. I've written about it as the living brand. And I pointed out how many times people say stuff, but then they don't act that way. And that it's always the experience that is stronger than the ad. Once you experience something, that's going to be much more. I think community of care is legitimate for the University of Louisville. So community automatically implies, where does the word community come from? Or communication come from? It comes from the Latin of communis, like establishing something in common. We are not just a mere collection of individuals. We don't call any random group a community. A community implies common values. A community implies common norms, because if you belong to a community, you kind of know what to expect from one another. The biggest thing of community to me is mutual responsibility. We called ourselves the community of care, and there's 3 levels, as you heard. Caitlin explained it to you. First of all, I want you all to take care of yourselves. Your generation, I'm very proud when you talk about self-care. The first time I even heard the words self-care was a few years ago in Kansas when I was the provost, and a student said to me, Dr. Bendapudi, how are you doing on self-care? And I thought, you know what? That is such a good point. I need to make sure that I'm taking care of myself as well. So that begins with that. I'd love to check in with you all, see how you're doing. I know it's been a difficult time, no matter where you are on any ideological spectrum, no matter who you are, it has been impossible not to be impacted by COVID-19 and the stressors of racial inequity. So I acknowledge that. I hope you're taking care of yourselves. The second part of the Cardinal's covenant, if you will, is that we take care of one another. I've told all of my Cardinals this. It's a big bad world out there, we get it, and you'll have to be competitive, but we don't have to compete with one another. Let us be a culture where we support each other. Together, we can take on either UK or the world or whatever else you might define. But for us, let's be there for one another. And finally, you know, you're so lucky, you're so fortunate, you're so privileged to be getting a college education. When you think about the percentages in the country, right now, just by getting your undergraduate degree, you're about 1/3 of the nation. in your, that actually will have a college education. So you're still incredibly fortunate to be in that group. So that means, what is the obligation on us to take care of the community around us? I'm looking forward to seeing what comes of this. And actually, I love this Cardinal Continuum. I love that because it's the growth mindset. It's not that you're stuck somewhere. We're on a continuum always, and we're trying to make ourselves better. So where do you think we could do better as a community? One of the things is that when we're trying to build community, I want to ask all of you a favor, because when we build community, it's easiest to build community with people who look like us, who maybe eat the same things we do, speak the same language we do, like the same things we do. But one of the benefits of education is that it tells us that we cannot be intellectually lazy, right? So I just want to say that. What do I mean? When you read, and you all know this, how do we learn? How do we have empathy? How do we develop a sense of community? The more we read, the more we challenge ourselves, we quickly start to realize that we may have very different upbringings, but we have the same values. Or we may realize that we are actually all fighting a common fight, or that we may have much more in common than we realize. So one of the things I'd really like you all to do is to broaden your community. And in fact, there's so much research that shows that they study people who have very narrow communities. So their communities, you're encouraged to look at the people you most commonly interact with, socially, professionally, and guess what? The broader your community, so the more diverse the communities you work with, and this is all empirical, I can give you the research. So it's not just me just saying it and saying, believe me, because you've always got to study. I tell people, in God we trust, everybody else bring data. I'm gonna challenge you, you gotta prove it to me. And so it shows that you're healthier. The studies actually showed they take a bunch of college students, and at random, half of them are given a cold virus, in their nose, and half of them a placebo, they don't know. Then they measure who actually catches cold. And the more diverse the networks you hang around, the better your immunity. That's one thing to think about. Not if you're immunocompromised. So, that's a whole different thing. I get it as someone who has autoimmune problems, so I get it. But that's one thing. The second thing is they find, even these are selfish reasons, is what I'm telling you. So if you want to be healthier. The second thing is, selfishly, if you want to have more access to jobs and promotions, it's actually the more diverse. It's called the strength of weak ties. That's how it's studied by sociologists and others, that the more diverse your network, the more likely you are to hear about opportunities. Because if we're in a community that looks very much like us, there's a great deal of comfort, because there's a lot of things you can take for granted. But it also reduces your chance of learning something absolutely new, because what your people in your community know, you might also know, because you have the same networks, the same points of access. Does that make sense, everybody? All right, so I'll stop preaching at you, but this is all research, and you can study this on networks and what happens. And so, sense of community, I want you to really reach out and get to know people that may look nothing like you, grew up in a completely different place, and still, we can always, I hope, find something we agree on, and then go from there, build on that, because you're cardinals that already binds you. All right, I may have time for maybe one more question or comment, am I right? Then I probably have to jump off and go to my other call. So let me see, I'm gonna call on someone. I can't see everybody's names. Mohammed, how are you doing, sir?
So I'm doing well. I'm a senior biology major. So most of the time I've just been working on my application to medical school. But I have seen a lot of what goes on in the medical field right now, and it's just, really just, powerful to see what people do and what sacrifices they make for the common good, even if it is, it presents a risk to them and their family. So I really do appreciate that.
That's good.
Mhm.
Sarah and Mackenzie, I love that they are each with their own paths word or whatever it's called, even though they're sitting on a couch by one another. I think that's pretty cool. There's technology for you.
Sorry, it like went off a little bit. I'm a sophomore. I'm a nursing major, and I think it's been interesting coming back because I live out of state, so it's been interesting coming back and being back in Louisville, especially with everything that's been going on. But just like seeing how strong Louisville is, despite all that's going on. And I've seen lots of students really just like work together and not just look out for themselves, but for the people around them, which is just super encouraging. So,
yeah. Yeah, we're roommates. And sorry. It's been interesting. I'm a sophomore. I'm a psych major, and it's both of our first years doing um, leadership in different student organizations. I do crew and she does delight, and that has been scary with the pandemic, but it's been really cool to see how like finding new ways to reach out to people, finding new ways to connect to people. That's like the coolest thing that I've seen, and it's something I didn't think I was going to be able to do. Thinking about it over the summer, I was like, I don't know, but there have been lots of new ideas, and it's been really cool to see.
All the people I haven't been able to hear from, Morgan and Lana and Braden and Emily, forgive me with time, and Job and everybody else. Take care of you. And one of the things that I hope comes out of today is you all get to know one person you didn't know as well before this conversation, and that you just keep in touch, talk, because again, you don't have to change who you are or what you believe, but building community means we support each other and we strengthen those bonds. Thank you for this time. And I am so grateful. It's been a busy week, a tough week. And I think I may want to end every Friday this way with a group of students because it'll gives me joy. That's important. Find something in your life that gives you joy. And you might think this is ridiculous or I'm just pandering and saying it to you, but it's not. For me, it connects me with my purpose. I believe in the transformative power of education. So when I see all of you, I get to imagine what will happen. Here's Mohammed as this world famous doctor and whatever else each of you is pursuing. And so please connect to your joy and to your purpose, because that's what will keep us resilient. Thank you. And taking care of yourself, taking care of one another, all of us, we're a community, and then doing our very best for the community outside of us. Okay? Thank you.
Once a volunteer, like what do you think what do I mean when I say we see ourselves in others? Anyone?
I guess I can go. So I guess from this, maybe we're trying to get that point across that we try to find commonalities between each other. So whatever we have in common in the other person, that's like we see ourselves in others.
Yeah. I mean, like we have so many commonalities. Like if we search for them, if we choose to search for them. So I guess anybody from any group can go, but did you expect to have as much in common with the group you were paired with? Like, did you think you were gonna have like a lot in common when you first entered the group? You can be honest.
Anybody can talk?
Yeah.
Oh, I will say that when I got into my group, I didn't know if we were going to have a lot in common, but we actually had a really good conversation. Besides the commonalities that we were supposed to find, we just kind of had a good combo, and it was nice meeting them too.
I'll ask this then. What is the impact of seeing ourselves in other people? Like, what is the impact in the purpose for trying to do that?
I guess when you make other people seem more human. It's easier to treat them as human, because if you don't know somebody, it can be easier to like brush them off, or maybe just not be very nice to them or something. But if you know them, and if you see things that are similar to similar in yourself, you can give them a similar grace that you give yourself.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you, Job.
You're welcome.
Bevan.
Vice versa. So if you are a person who tends to isolate and isn't as kind to yourself, sometimes coming out and seeing new faces and meeting new people, you can extend some of the graces that you would extend to others to yourself. I don't know if that's okay to interject there, but that's my experience. So I can.
No, we talk about self-care. That's perfect. That's a perfect point.
Yeah, I find it sometimes easier to be gracious with others than I am with myself. So it means a lot to me to be able to see faces and know that I'm a part of a community that's bigger than just my little bubble here at home. So I appreciate that. U of L has been huge in connecting people through activities like this. And I think even though you don't have that in-person aspect of the sensation of being next to a person with energy that is their own, I think that it's amazing that we can actually see each other's faces and still connect in this way. So sorry to go on with that.
Thank you. Yeah, like we're seeing it's possible. Like no matter what comes up, it's totally possible to continue to connect with one another. Whether it's like Zoom calls for class, or even just like, it's just fun. Like it's cool to see that we can still be with each other in some way. I found myself calling people a lot more, just because I can't see them, or like always go out or see them at bars or whatever it is. And so yeah. And so I guess I have a one final point, and then I was going to tell a little story. But what if we were as fast to connect with people as we were to critique them? Like, what if I just told you guys to go into your groups and critique the hell out of each other? What would that have looked like? And why is it more important? What if we were as fast to find connection as we were to critique? What would that look like on campus, in the world? You can just unmute anybody.
I was gonna say, this one always reminds me of, not always reminds me, but this question made me think about bad drivers. Like when I see someone that's driving badly on the road, I'm like, you were the worst person to ever exist. Like, gosh, you were awful. But like if I accidentally cut someone off, or like I accidentally run a stop sign, I'm like, I'm only human, people. I can't, you can't expect this much out of me. So it's like that kind of like, what if I had just been like, they are probably really on, like they're running late for something, they spilled hot coffee all over their shirt, like that kind of same grace that we were talking about earlier.
So I was just thinking, like, pretty much if you find like a little part of yourself in someone else, like say they are currently going through an experience that you've already been through, like maybe a hard time, that just is a way that you can kind of minister to them and make them realize that they're not alone. And so when we are quick to critique instead of finding connections, that kind of isolates us further. And we're already really isolated right now, like physically speaking. So I think it's really, really important to really, really minister to our communities and just reach out to people that we might not normally reach out to, whether that be virtually, just because you can really connect with someone and make them really feel like they have someone to talk to, which is really, really needed right now. So that's all I was going to say.
The story, as the story goes, one day a man was walking along the beach when he noticed a boy, picking up and gently throwing things into the ocean, and the beach was just covered with stuff. And approaching the boy, he asked, what are you doing? And the boy replied, throwing starfish back into the ocean. The surf's up, tide's going out, and if I don't throw them back, they're going to die. And the man laughed and just said to the boy, he said, do you realize there's miles of thousands of starfish, miles of beach tens of thousands of these things, you can't make any difference. And, after listening politely, the boy bent down, picked up another starfish, threw it into the ocean, and said, I made a difference to that one. And, I find myself like oftentimes resorting to a sort of cynicism when it comes to like world problems. There's like 8-9 billion of us. Things seem to be so overwhelming that like I find myself resisting that urge to be cynical and be like, nothing's going to make a difference. Nothing I do will make a difference. But if you can help one person, like that truly is like, it's a story we hear a lot. And it's kind of like, for those of you who've heard it a lot, it seems like it resonates. I hope it resonates the same way, because it remains true that if you can help one person, whether that's like your spouse later in life, whether that is a child in a program like Big Brothers Big Sisters or Global Game Changers or some sort of like nonprofit on campus, if it's just like your roommate, helping them with their homework or like being there for them, you can be there for one person. But to know that you can impact at least one life is something that like this program is based around. But the whole concept of community care, at the very least, you can throw yourself back into the ocean. That's kind of what's part of the same value is, this is a care for ourselves, as well. Tell a time where you feel like somebody has like thrown you back into the ocean. It doesn't necessarily mean saved your life, or, literally thrown you back into the ocean, but somebody who like in some way has been that like light for you, or guided you through some sort of obstacle, and just be able to like, and just share at least one of those instances with your group, or just like keep going around and talking about it. And then also times where you feel like you've been able to do that for somebody else. Because often we don't give ourselves credit for the people we help. We're always looking at like what we can do better. Most people in this room are pretty high achievers and pretty highly involved, and yet we're probably the most focused on what we suck at and what needs to get better and what's on our next goal sheet and like what's on our to-do list. And so acknowledge yourself for the people you have helped so far, as well as the people who've helped you. What's your starfish story?
I'll go. My name is Zaria Lucas, and I'm the marketing director for the Student Organization Advisory Board for the upcoming academic school year. And my starfish story would have to be my sophomore year of college. I went to Tennessee State University. And before she was my mentor, she was just the woman that worked at the women's centers to me. And so after I got to know her and stuff, I told her I was always one of those college students that paid for school out of pocket. So for me, it was always hard for me to scramble up the money to get by every single month. So I was telling her this, and so she was able to find me scholarships to keep me in school, to keep me like not to work as hard as I was working. I was working every single day at Chipotle, trying to just pay my $700 a month to go to school. And she really helped me out a lot. Like, she lightened my load so much, and I still love her, respect her. I talked to her yesterday. She's an amazing woman. And yeah, that's my starfish story.
I love that you guys have like remained in touch. A lot of times when people tell their starfish story, or like people who've impacted them, it's like, oh, but it was like 10 years ago. We haven't talked to each other in a while. So that's awesome. That kind of ties into something we wanted to do later, but I love that. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? I know other people have great stories.
Hi, my name is Sarah Jump. Also call it Zaria because we used to work at Panera together when you were in high school. But yeah,
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I knew that. Hey, girl.
Hey, girl. I'm actually getting my master's at U of L. I teach public speaking for the communication department. But my starfish story was when I was in my undergrad at U of L, and I was crying hysterically, probably outside the humanities building, because I got a bad grade on a paper, and I had a minor in women's gender studies at the time. So I was like, I'm going to drop this. I'm not minor. Apparently I'm not good at it, blah, blah, blah. And this random person just came up to me and was like, I don't know what you're crying about, but you will be okay. And you need to continue with what you're doing. And then I talked to her about it, and she was like, no, it's okay. It's just a grade. continue what you're doing. And that just really helped me at the time.
Do you still stay in contact with her?
Oh, we didn't even exchange names at all. Just a random person, yeah, nothing.
I love that.
Random.
Okay, I'll tell my starfish story.
Awesome.
It goes back to my undergrad years, many, many years ago. And I started out in a college where I was a commuter student, and I hated it. Sorry for all the commuter students. So, but I do feel for you because I've been there. So I left that school and transferred to another school where I lived on campus. But in the midst of transferring, I lost a year of school. So I ended up taking 5 years as an undergrad. And I went to school to be a high school English teacher. So first I got my degree in literature and English, and then I had to go back for a year for a certification to be a teacher. And I was teaching middle school and high school. So I get to my student teaching, which is the very last thing you do. And I found out I absolutely hated it. That I never wanted to be a teacher in my life. And here I was, 6 years of college. I felt like something out of Animal House, 6 years of college down the drain. It's like, what do I do now? But while I was in college, I was poor. So I worked as a student assistant in the registrar's office and then later in campus activities. And the then director of campus activities, his name was Rance Catlin, said to me, I was giving my woes of, okay, what do I do with my life? And he said, we're starting these new positions here for evening and weekend program coordinators so that the university will stay open and active and lively after it closes at 5. So he said, you should try out for the position. You'd be really good for that. And I never thought I would ever work in higher education. I didn't even know that that was a career. I didn't know how people got to that. And so I applied, and that was 1987. And here I am in 2020, still working with students, still hopefully making a difference, and something that I never would have thought of. But the big twist of the story is that Rance, when he graduated from college, had applied for a job here at U of L, and he wasn't given the job. So then he went to Stockton. And the person who didn't give him the job was George Howe, who is my best friend and who the Red Barn's named after and just retired after 50 years, was the one that didn't hire him. And so I found out at a conference where Rance and George were both at, and they told me the story, and neither one had mentioned anything about this. And I said to George, I said, if you had hired Rance, I would never be here today, because he was the one that got me into higher education. So it's just such a weird connection of people and how you get where you are, and you never know. And sometimes, what's meant to be is meant to be. I'm a firm believer of that.
Thank you, Julie. Come on, one more.
Now you'll have some good stories.
I can share mine real quick then.
I like Julie's story. Can I say that?
Oh,
Yes.
thanks.
That means a lot to me as a transitional student. So thanks for bringing that up. So that's it.
You never know where you're going to end up. So,
Morgan, did you want to share?
Yeah, so some backstory real quick is I'm an education major in elementary education. So I had a lot of undiagnosed things at the time in school. So I wasn't getting the support I needed. So I hated school, didn't want to be there. I was close to failing, just wasn't happening. And then in 7th grade, I had a teacher stop me and say, look, you're better than what you're doing. I see what you're going through. Let me help you. And she ended up completely turning around my entire output on school. And because of her, I started actually writing. I actually liked school. I wanted to be a teacher because of her. And I actually talked to her the other day, and she's like, when you graduate, let me know, because if my school is hiring, I will put you on for that. So
That's awesome.
and the rest is history.
Wow.
So I'll share mine. I'm Dylan Armstrong. I'm a freshman at U of L. So in high school, I wasn't really sure exactly what I wanted to do. I don't even think I shared this with my group. I just kind of remembered it. But I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I knew I liked law, and I was very interested in law and politics. And at my high school, we actually had 3 different law classes that they offered, all taught by the same teacher, Mr. Brown. And through taking his classes, he just changed my whole perspective on it. We had conversations every single day after class. I was late for class probably 10 to 15 times that semester, just because I was talking with him. But yeah, he really just kind of changed my perspective on a lot of different things. He encouraged me to join mock trial, which I ended up loving. And yeah, it kind of ended up leading into my criminal justice and political science major and coming here. So yeah.
Thank you guys. Thank you, Dylan, for sharing too. I want to get a few more stories, but from from the other way. So like from the other side of where do you think you were essentially like someone's starfish buddy for someone else that you can remember, like where you I like the one of just running into somebody in the humanities building. Like where do you feel like that's been something that's happened for you too, where you've just kind of like went out of your way and maybe that means a lot, like you were the person throwing somebody back in?
I can share mine. So I went to Northern Kentucky University for my undergrad, and I'm currently getting my master's degree at Louisville. But while I was at Northern Kentucky, I had a really bad habit of just picking up sorority littles. I have 7. I love them. And there was one person in particular. I had a really tough undergraduate experience at some points, just because of some personal things that kept popping up, and I had a really difficult time pushing through them and finding like motivation to keep going at times. I think, as what I'm sure probably most of us can agree, that we've had those moments of like, is this worth it? Like, what's the point, kind of thing. And so I was kind of feeling those moments, and I had someone who, paused and took the time to say like, hey, this isn't you. Like, you have so much going for you. You've done so much, get up. And so kind of seeing that. And then a few years later, I met another student who, we had never really talked before. We've never really met before, but I heard that she had been going through a very similar situation through the grapevine. It was a very small school. And so I think just on a whim, I had just been hearing other people talking about her situation, but I just like DM'd her on Twitter or something and just said like, hey, I just want to let you know, like, I've gone through something really similar and it sucks. And I just want to reach out and say that like, I know how you're feeling. And I know if you want to talk, that I'm here for you if you do. And so we just ended up just talking about that. And that was like the basis of our relationship for a long time. And then, eventually it turned into like a real genuine relationship. And now she's one of my sorority littles. And we talk 4 days a week now. And it's just crazy how, something as small as just DMing someone. I'm a firm believer, kind of like what I think someone said earlier, but I think you go through things to be able to help other people get through them later. And I think that was something that, kind of showed the impact of something so small can have such a big lasting impact, not only on their life, but on your life. Cause she's been someone who's gotten me through a lot of really difficult times too. So it's kind of nice that we have that co-starfishism, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share my story next. I'm in a similar position as Tori. Like, I'm in a sorority here at U of L, and I'm our academic achievement chairman. So I've worked a lot with girls who are, in particular, struggling with their classes. Maybe they had a bad semester, and I'm just trying to help them up. But there was one girl in particular that I very strongly related with. So I'm a pre-dental student, and one of the girls in our sorority specifically, she's a pre-dental student as well. So I can understand what she's going through and all the pressure that you have to be super involved and have a 4.0 GPA every semester and just be the best you can be all the time. And it's exhausting. It really is. So it was really special for me to talk to her because she had a couple bad semesters, and she reached out and she was like, Scotland, I don't know if I can do this. I really need help. I just feel like I'm drowning. There's just so much on my plate right now. And she said that to me as a freshman. So this was last year. And as a freshman, I was in the exact same boat. I was trying to get involved with everything. I came in with a lot of credit. So I started off taking some really challenging biology and chemistry classes. I was just weighing over my head. And I'm kind of independent in the sense of when it comes to school. So I didn't feel comfortable reaching out to anyone at the time. So it was really special to me that I saw myself in her, and she reached out for that help that I knew that I needed when I was in her exact position. So we worked with her classes. I met with her advisor. The three of us all met together, and I've been checking in with her every single week. And she had a great semester last semester, and she reached out to me and was like, Scotland, I couldn't have done that without you. Literally, you basically made my schedule for me, told me exactly what to get involved in, told me all the steps I need to take and exactly what I need to do. I don't know if I would still be the same major that I am, have the same life goals that I would, or even be at U of L if it wasn't without your help. So that was just really special to me to think that I made such a big impact in someone who, I kind of saw myself in. So yeah, that's my story.
To understand like just how the most crazy little thing branches out into this like amazing life. So I'm very happy you guys shared your starfish stories. There's so many. I feel like there's so many when you go back in your life, like if you look at every little tiny event, you can see all the people that had to be present, and all the people you had to be present for. And hopefully one day those people will reach out to you. And if they don't, it's okay.
It a little further. What does it look like for you all to be a part of a community of care, even just at the University of Louisville? Like, I know for me, something that comes to mind is like taking care of yourself as far as like wearing a mask and, washing your hands and stuff like that. Like that's a huge, like I'm seeing masks in this call right now. So what else for you all kind of comes to mind when you think of a community of care being at the University of Louisville, even right now?
So I will say that this is only my second semester at U of L, and SOAB is my first organization that I've been involved with. And I do want to say that the people that I converse with on the daily basis in the organization are always really caring and loving. And they really showed me like a lot of love, and we show each other a lot of love, especially Caitlin is a really good person to talk to too, guys. I just want to say, but being in there, it really taught me that like it's a team effort, and like we always try to communicate that with each other, and I really, really like that.
Yeah, I can piggyback off of that. I mean, I'm a freshman. It's my first semester here, so obviously I don't have a full definition of what it means to be a Louisville Cardinal yet. But in these, especially the first few weeks, just kind of getting to know everybody on my floor or in the fraternity. Jordan was actually the one who reached out to me. I left him on red for a week, but then I ended up going by our suite and, meeting all the guys, meeting Jordan. It was just such a great experience. And it's really all about brotherhood, sisterhood, just, I guess, cardinalhood. That's a little cheesy, but just everybody kind of comes together, and we're all one group. We're all one team, especially with like football and basketball too. I'm a huge basketball fan. I'll go crazy and probably get kicked out of a few games, but it's just kind of coming together under one flag, under one banner.
I wanted to say that, like, personally, I don't really think that there's any I don't think there's a whole lot of differentiation between like universities for the most part, like by like students themselves. Like if I were to say like I'm a Cardinal, to me that means I go to the University of Louisville. Like I think that I would be more or less the same if I went to somewhere else. But what I do think is that kind of makes like a difference is that Louisville is, in my opinion, an academic focused school versus, like a party school or really like, I mean, we have good athletic programs, but that's not like a big focus from like what I've seen. But I also think that a lot of it is kind of like going in the direction of like, we'll say passion. And there's like a lot of different, opportunities to kind of pursue things that, you're passionate about. And I mean, you can kind of see that with a lot of our student leaders. So I'll say that those two things, might not be specific to just Louisville, but it's definitely something that I've noticed at Louisville.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure that for anyone who's gone to a different university, I think that there's definitely some truth in what you're saying. But I also think that, like what we were saying, like every person you come in contact with changes you. And so, like Julie was saying, if she had gone to U of L, then she wouldn't have, met that guy who told her to do what she's been doing for years now. So I think you're right. It's not necessarily the buildings that connect us or change us, but it absolutely is the people that we're surrounding ourselves with. And that's why I'm so excited to be surrounded by such an incredible group as you all. Does anyone else want to share anything? Yeah.
It feels to me kind of like, yeah, pardon me while I try to find some words for it, but it's kind of like we're all a point of reference, and each one of us are going to be charting paths away into the communities and the families and everything that we build going forward. So when I think of us, we are individuals that come together, but we're not just that. We are kind of a starting point for a map that's going to be created that is going to venture out from U of L. And that's what I think about when I think about us not just being our individual, our individual self, though that is very important. What I really see is it's kind of like our starting point in a collection of several different points, but this is where we are going to lay the groundwork by choosing what is important to us and how we want to show up in our community. So, and I see that I see it across the board. I see it with the teachers. I see it whether I'm angry and going to the bursar's office or whatever it is, for my own situation. It's never the people that make up the whole community. It's just really amazing when you look at it. And if for me personally, having been at a couple different schools and in several different jobs, there is a resonance or a vibe that is U of L that feels very different. And it is a connection and an openness that you don't necessarily find that everywhere you go. And I love that about U of L. I love that about the staff and the faculty and the teachers, as well as the new faces that are coming in and deciding to be a part of it. So that's what I think of.
And to kind of add on to what Bevan said, I've been here a long time. And one thing I've always said about U of L is we are a large school. I mean, we have 22,000 students and we have a very big campus, but it's got a small campus atmosphere because you can walk across campus and see faces that you know. You can get involved. You have the opportunities to meet people through our student organizations, which you all do a fabulous job with. You can meet Dr. Martis at an event, or Dr. Bendapudi, the president of the college, comes and speaks to you. And that's what I love about U of L, is that it is a family type atmosphere. And, my thing is always been that I want every student to feel like they can belong here. And if there is a student out there that you know of that is struggling or doesn't feel like they have a place, send them our way. We will help them. We will take care of them, because everybody should feel the way I do, that we belong. We are part of this greater community.
I feel like everybody's points, like, kind of they hit me too. Just like what brought me here was like the smallness and kind of intimacy of like the campus. Not only with just like we have so many trees, and it's just like a shady, nice campus. But it's like it's actually, I mean, it's no more than 10, 12 minutes, like at a decent walking pace from one side to the other. And that kind of like goes all the way to the top. Like, you know, what I think one of my first experiences with like understanding how powerful Louisville is to be a part of was one of my fraternity brothers being, you know, part of the Peace Center, and just like understanding, like, I didn't think universities did stuff like that, or just like had that level of support for students. That's just like crazy. And we have so many things like that, just like events, and everybody trying to do like philanthropies and like joint philanthropies, and the president's involvement and sports, and like everything is so involved and together. And it's just like an intimate vibe. And that's always what it's kind of meant for me, like to be a Cardinal, is like, I felt that when I visited Louisville. Louisville was like perfect. And it still kind of has that same vibe, and it keeps getting better.
But something that we keep hitting on every single one of my graduate classes is just the concept of caring about the person standing in front of you, caring about the person who's sitting next to you on the bus, or who held the door open for you, or you hopefully are going to hold the door open for. And just realizing, like, I don't know if you all have, you know, ever seen like skyscraper pictures or looked at pictures of these huge buildings, and there's all these different lights on of people, but like every single one of those people has a life, and they have parents, and they have friends, and they have, you know, romance maybe, and you know, these people are so complex. So, you know, when we're kind of thinking about like what's something we can do, what's something we can work on, just know that it can be as something of as simple as like, hey, I know that person is really struggling right now, and I'm just going to text them and say, do you want to get lunch next week? That's it. And it can be something as simple as that. You know, you never realize the impact that something that you do or something that you say can have on that other person. So I think when John's talking about that community of care, yes, we can absolutely, you know, start campaigns and do donation drives, and we can do all these things. Those are incredible. But I think that when we're talking about how to establish that community of care, it really does start with us. And it really does start with, you know, something as simple as like, hey, I'm in my class right now, and the professor is the only person with their camera on. I'm going to turn mine on so they don't feel alone, because that person, you know, has a family and is probably having a rough day too. And they might not be like me. You know, I could listen to myself talk for hours and hours, but, you know, just taking a moment to kind of care and ask questions and pay attention and really just connect the same way that you all did a great job connecting in those breakout rooms. If we were as quick to find, you know, like, hey, you told me you had a dog, tell me about your dog. You know, everyone loves talking about their dog, something like that. There's so much strength in togetherness and vulnerability and connection. And I really challenge you all, if you know, aren't thinking of anything right now, I challenge you all to just think of one or two people that you just really want to connect with. If it's just some random strangers, or, you know, I know John mentioned homeless people earlier. If that's something, you know, you're driving and you see someone next to your car asking for money, what is it going to hurt to give someone that $5 bill? I mean, truthfully, talking about the starfish story, it matters to that person, and it's going to impact that person, even if it seems so small and so pointless. Part of our call to action that we really wanted to be intentional with this week is when we were talking about our starfish stories and people that have impacted us in the last years, months, days, whatever, I would encourage you to let them know. I know that I had a friend whose name is Bo, and he's my boo. He's my best friend. But he was playing some card game the other night, and he called me, and it was like 11:30 at night, so I immediately thought it was an emergency. And he was like, hey, we're just playing this game, and we're supposed to call someone that has made an impact on our lives. And I just wanted to call you and tell you that that person is you, and that I love you, and that I'm thankful for you. And then he hung up because he was intoxicated. But in that moment, that meant the world to me. He had no clue what I was going through. You know, and it was something that like, oh, we've never really talked about that before, but that's amazing. So I challenge you all in the next week or two to just kind of take a second to give that person a call or text, or maybe wait outside the humanities building and see if you can spot that individual. But just say thank you, and just, you know, try to make that connection last, because especially right now, we're feeling so isolated and disconnected from each other. It's just nice to know that, you know, it's nice to know that your actions in your life, they have meaning, and it's nice to be able to pay that forward to other people too.
Can I add to that, Caitlin?
Absolutely, Devin, go for it.
Okay, I'm sorry. What I'm thinking of while you're speaking is show up. Like your presence is your power. You have, like everyone's been mentioning, You have no idea. Maybe just being in the right spot at the right time does make that difference. So that has been really huge for me in coming back to school. I haven't had to prioritize classes and classwork on top of the things that I'm trying to figure out. But showing up, taking the step even to show up today to this, or to click on that link when that email came through that said this exists, would you like to be a part? Well, I really would, but what if I don't fit in? Or what if you know, what if I'm the old lady in the room? Whatever it is, to sit there and say, I'm going to show up and I'm just going to see. Maybe I'm just going to listen. But showing up, I think there is never a time in the last amount of time, exactly, Sarah, there's never been a time that I have shown up to U of L since I started, whether it was in December last winter when I found out I was accepted, to any of the classes or labs that I showed up before the pandemic shut everything down. There's never a time that I show up on campus to do something that I did not leave feeling 100% better. And that didn't matter how bad I felt or how afraid I was to show up or whatever it was. I always felt better if I just pushed myself. It's kind of like going to the gym, right? You got to show up, you got to do it. But once you get there, you feel so much better when you have that connection. And it's so much more than just what you learn in that class. You know, the culture and a community and care, it really is the people. So you're right.
That was awesome. I love that. And definitely, like Sarah said in the group, imposter syndrome, a nasty beast. But you know, when we're able to support each other, hopefully we can kind of help each other get through that, because I'm telling you right now, each and every one of you belongs at this university, and you belong on this planet, and you now belong to my life. So congrats. It's not what you knew you signed up for, but you did.
And finally, just know that the Student Organization Advisory Board and me, we're here for you always, not just with Cardinal Continuum, you know, whether it be with your organization, so whether it be you're having a really bad time and you need to talk to somebody, we're here. So